Would you give your child to your worst enemy if it was the only way to keep them alive? We know him as the wisest man to ever live. But King Solomon's wisdom wasn't just a collection of clever proverbs. It wasn't found in ancient books or dusty scrolls. It was forged in the heat of conflict and found in the darkest, most desperate corners of the human heart. This is the story of how a single command, a single choice, revealed a truth that no amount of evidence ever could. Imagine ancient Jerusalem, a bustling city of trade and faith. In a humble house lived two women. They were companions, perhaps friends, sharing the joys and struggles of life. Their bond grew even closer when they both gave birth to sons, just 3 days apart. The house, once quiet, was now filled with the new sounds of life. But joy can be fragile. In the dead of night, one of the mothers, deep in an exhausted sleep, rolled over onto her newborn son. The unthinkable had happened. She had accidentally smothered her child. The silence that followed must have been deafening. When she woke and realized what she had done, a wave of grief and panic washed over her. But that grief quickly curdled into something else. Something cold, desperate, and cruel. In the darkness, a terrible plan formed in her mind. She looked at her sleeping housemaid, who held her own living, breathing son close. In an act of profound betrayal, she crept across the room. She took her own dead child and placed him in the arms of the sleeping mother. Then she stole the living baby, claiming him as her own. When the sun rose, the second mother woke to a nightmare. The baby in her arms was cold and still. Her heart shattered, but as she looked closer, she realized this wasn't her son. A scream tore through the house, followed by furious accusations. "You switched them. This dead baby is yours. Give me back my son." The first woman denied it all, clutching the living child, her face a mask of false innocence. "No, the living one is my son, and the dead one is yours." The argument raged, echoing through their small home and spilling out into the streets, a tangled knot of lies and sorrow. The dispute eventually reached the highest court in the land, the court of King Solomon. Picture the scene, a grand torchlit hall. The king sits on his magnificent throne of cedar and gold, his face unreadable as he watches the two women. Both are disheveled, their faces stained with tears. Both tell their story with passionate conviction. Both claim to be the mother of the living child. The court is in a deadlock. There were no witnesses to the crime. There was no DNA testing, no modern forensics. There was only the word of one mother against the other. For any other judge, the case would have been impossible. How do you find the truth when truth itself is the weapon? This is where the story shifts from a simple legal dispute to a masterclass in human psychology. Solomon didn't look for more evidence in the room. He looked for the evidence hidden within their souls. He knew that the truth wasn't in their words, but in their hearts. He stood, and a sudden silence fell over the entire court. All eyes were on the king. He turned to one of his guards and gave a chilling command. "Bring me a sword!" The room held its breath. A murmur of confusion and fear rippled through the crowd. A sword? What for? The guard returned, the polished bronze of the sword glinting in the torchlight. He presented it to the king. Solomon then pointed to the small, living baby, the center of this whole storm, and he delivered the command that would echo through history. "Cut the living child in two," he said, his voice calm and steady, "and give half to the one and half to the other." Imagine the sheer shock in that room. It was a moment of pure, calculated psychological terror. This wasn't a judgment, it was a trap, a test designed not to see who was right, but to see who was real. The two women, who had been screaming at each other just moments before, were now frozen. Their reactions would decide everything. The first woman, the liar, looked at the raised sword. A cruel, bitter satisfaction crept across her face. If she couldn't have the child, then no one would. Her heart was so filled with envy and spite that she would rather see the baby die than see her rival win. She looked at the king and said, "It shall be neither mine nor yours. Cut him." But the second woman, the true mother, reacted with pure, instinctual horror. The thought of the blade touching her son's skin was more than she could bear. Her legal claim, her pride, her anger, it all vanished in an instant. replaced by the overwhelming, primal need to protect her child. She fell to the floor, prostrate with agony, and cried out to the king, "O my lord, give her the living child, and by no means kill him. Please, just let him live." And in that moment, the trap snapped shut. The truth was laid bare for all to see. Solomon knew. A true mother's love is not about possession, it's about preservation. The liar would rather see everyone lose than admit her own defeat. But a real mother would rather lose her child to her worst enemy than lose that child to the grave. Solomon raised his hand, stopping the guard. He pointed to the weeping woman on the floor. "Give her the living child," he commanded. "She is his mother." The baby was returned to the arms of his true mother, and the wisdom of King Solomon became the stuff of legend. It's a powerful story about justice and wisdom, but the real question it asks isn't about the king. It's about us. It forces us to confront the nature of love, sacrifice, and the choices we make under extreme pressure. So I want to ask you, put yourself in that mother's shoes. If you were the true mother, standing in that court, watching the sword being raised over your child, would you have been able to make that choice? Would you have been able to let go, to give your child to a liar just to save their life? Or would the fear and the injustice of it all have made you hesitate? It's a story of incredible love, but it's also a story of extreme sacrifice. Let me know what you would have done in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.